Hello, and welcome to another American Photo Trucks post-processing video tutorial. Thank you very much for coming to our Calhan Rama Windmills Little Church and Infinity Road Milky Way shoot. We really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you had a good time. I hope you got some good images and images you can be proud of. And if this is your first time ever seeing one of these post-processing videos, I'll kind of walk you through it. Basically, what I'm going to be doing today is we're going to make a panorama of images we created that we actually created last night at the Milky Way shoot. And I'll just walk you through it. This is me right there, so you can follow along with me. And every time I hit a keystroke, you'll see it appear right here in this little square. So you can follow along with me and pause me as you see fit and walk along and hopefully do it just like I do, and then add a bit of your own artistic flair to make it your own picture. And so I did this little panorama at the pond with windmill. And you can see I wasn't as good a panorama creator as I normally am because my tripod wasn't perfectly level, but hopefully we can fix that a little bit in post. So we're in Adobe Camera Bridge right now, and I've selected the 5 images that I'm going to use for my panorama. I did that simply by clicking Alt and clicking on them, and when I double click them, then it'll open them up in Camera RAW, and this is where we're going to do most of our processing. And there are all the images. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up so that every edit I do to one image will do to all of them. And I'll do that by clicking on these little lines right up here and say select all. And now you can see all the images have been selected, so everything I do to one will affect them all. And we can see the cows in this image, so that's kind of cool. First thing I always do is my white balance. And I encourage you to play with this. This is one of the ways you can make the image your own. You know, a night sky is black, but it's really not. I mean, when you start looking at the prism that is our atmosphere, there's a lot of colors coming through there. So I usually like to make my sky a little blue just because the daytime sky is blue, so I figure the nighttime sky is dark blue. And you do that by adjusting your white balance. And you can play around with different of the auto shades. There's auto, which really doesn't look bad at all. Daylight, which I think I saw a lot of people with kind of a daylight hue on the back of their camera. You do not have to stay with that. If that doesn't suit you, by all means, play around with your, there's cloudy. Play around with the different white balances. Tungsten, that's really blue. Shade. Fluorescent. Fluorescent isn't bad either. I mean, that's a pretty nice balance right there. Flash, and of course custom. I think I'm going to start off with fluorescent, and then I'm going to play with it just a bit more. I'm going to make it just a bit more blue and maybe add just a bit more of the purple tint. Let's give it a little bit of color. So there we go. And what I do, and I'm sure a lot of people don't, but just here's how I do it, is I usually start off by hitting the auto button, and that adjusts all of these images like that. And of course, it's going to way overexpose the images, and I'll bring them back down because actually my exposure was just about dead on. I really like how it exposed. I might bring it up 10%, just looking at it. And then sometimes it doesn't quite put it all, and I'll say sync settings, and then it'll bring them all so that they're all the same. And you're going to want to do that. Contrast is usually your friend with Milky Way images. Bring up some of the shadows here. I kind of like this area down here. Whites are usually your friend with Milky Way, but you don't want to overdo them because that does this here. Clarity is usually your friend, but don't do too much because I'm going to show you another place where we do kind of a special clarity that is really great for Milky Way images. And vibrance, usually your friend. Not too much. I mean, I don't do too much of anything, but you know, you start to bring it out. And there it is right there, a little bit of vibrance right there, and you can kind of see it in the stars. Kind of see it down here. Got a nice reflection. Maybe just a tad of saturation, give it a little punch of color. For sharpening, that's the next thing I do. I do not sharpen Milky Way images much. Might bring it up to a 50. Then with a radius of about a 1.5. And then I hold down the Alt key and I only sharpen the parts of the image that I want to sharpen by using this masking feature. And what I'm trying to do here is get the stars to be nice and sharp. So as I move this across, I can see how the mask is affecting it. And all I want to do is really affect my edges and the stars and make them nice sharp points. And that worked really good. Look at how nice and sharp they are. I might have even over sharpened there. I'll come down a little bit. Let them glow a little. There we go. That's kind of nice. Then I'm going to move over, and this is a big one. This is, you're going to apply your lens profile. And this helps a lot. You click apply lens profile, but most of you probably like me were using a manual lens. I was using the Rokinon 24mm. So I go down and I pick my lens profile, Rokinon. It somehow defaults to the 14mm, and I think a lot of you were using the 14 last night, so that's fine. But I'm going to put mine at 24, and look what that did. It auto-corrected just ever so subtly and very, very well any vignetting and distortion in the picture. And isn't that just beautiful? It works so well. The Rokinon profiles were just added in the last couple updates for Camera RAW, and it has really helped us Milky Way photographers. Remember I told you about contrast and structure clarity is what it's called here in Camera RAW. And I said we're not going to do too much of it because we've got this really cool button that helps us do just a fantastic job with a much more focused and precise way of doing that, and that is this Haze filter that's in the effects tab here. And as we move it, let's put it on one of the images that has the core on it, because then you can really start to see it. So here's the core of our Milky Way, and now I'm going to start to move this Haze filter and watch what happens. Just everything you want to happen with the Milky Way image. Look at it, it's starting to make the Milky Way pop. It's really not making everything else too dark. It's just this beautiful, focused, and really nice. You don't want to move it too much, but that looks pretty darn good to me. And I'm going to say sync settings right there. And there we go. So now I want to put my panorama together. And one of the, new features of Adobe Camera RAW is this better stitch to panorama feature. And you get that by clicking the same place where you were clicking sync settings. And I may be going kind of fast. Definitely I am, because you don't want this video to be too long. But keep in mind, you can stop and pause to catch up with me. You can see exactly the keystrokes that I'm using. And just do it at your own pace here. So I'm going to say merge to panorama. I'm going to hit that and let it start doing its thing. I'm not going to sit here and make you guys watch every, oh well, I was going to put it on pause, but that happened so fast that I guess I really don't need to. So right there, it created the panorama, and look at what a great job it did with it. This boundary wrap is a way of, if it started cutting off corners, or it wasn't a perfect panorama, you could use this to, as you move it, to kind of create, there you go, and it's there you go, and it's actually making it a little better here. I didn't realize. So there it is, kind of there, but I kind of like my windmill to be standing straight up and down, so say right about there. It's about right with that boundary wrap. And it's so much nicer than any type of content aware fill or anything else you usually see with these panorama programs. It's really been a nice addition to the latest versions. And then you simply hit merge, and I'm going to call this, what do we call it? Windmill, pond and cows, Pano. And it automatically defaults to a digital negative file, DNG. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now. I'm going to hit save. And now it lets you edit this digital negative file. And I mean, look at how nice this came out. I mean, the stitching is perfect. I like how straight up and down my windmill is. Colors are pretty darn good, but I'm going to show you one thing if you want to make the Milky Way pop even more. And that's by using this brush tool, adjustment brush. You click on the adjustment brush and you see this right here. This has actually created a brush. The center of the brush is where the most of the adjustments you make are going to occur, and then they're going to feather out to the edge. And you adjust the size of the brush the way you adjust the size of all brushes in Adobe with your parentheses. So I'm going to make mine just a little bit bigger because I want it to cover the core. I've already got a lot of my settings here, and you can see I don't move anything too much. A little bit of dehaze, a little bit of saturation, a little bit of clarity, just a little pop of exposure, and I'm going to turn that down a little bit since we were so bright. And then I'm just going to brush over the Milky Way. You can see it made it pop even just a little bit extra there. We got a little bit of a shooting star right there. That's kind of cool. So just a little bit of extra pop there. And I'll tell you what, I'm kind of loving life. I like this image kind of the way it is. That ain't too darn bad. So now if you hit open image, that's what it's going to do. It's going to actually open this in what I use to do my editing, which is Photoshop. And a lot of you use Lightroom, and that's just fine. But you know what? This image is just fine with me. It looks good. I'm going to leave it as is. Maybe I'll play with it later, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we've made a really nice panorama. We've created our little arching Milky Way, and I think this looks pretty cool. We got a nice reflection in the pond. I'm loving it. So now all you would do is you have to flatten your image first and then hit File, Save As. And if you want to share it on the internet, you'd save it as a JPEG. You can keep the same settings there and the same file name. Then just hit Save. And there you go. There's your panorama. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's helpful. And I hope to see you all again at another American Photo Treks adventure. Our next one is going to be 11 Mile Canyon, where we have even darker skies and some very, very interesting foreground compositions involving a real beautiful lake, forest, shoreline, some great rocks jutting out into the lake, and some nice trees. And of course, we'll be bringing out our tent while we'll light up the tent for a really neat foreground picture. And thanks everyone for coming to these workshops. We enjoy doing them. We really enjoy meeting everyone. And I hope you got some shots you like. And thanks again for coming. You guys have a great one. Bye.